All right, I want to talk about razor blades. You can see I'm clean shaven. Like to take off my beard every once in a while so I can remember what I look like. And I think that there's some lessons in this, and so I'm going to share some thoughts. Apologize if I'm out of breath in between sets here. So yesterday I was shaving all this off, and you can see I got a bunch of cuts on my face. I was really tempted to make a video then. My face, I looked like I had been attacked by a family of badgers. And there's just blood everywhere. And it's not like I'm a novice at shaving, but a couple of months ago, I switched over to one of these razor blades. You may have seen these before, depending on your vintage. And what happened was, one day I saw an ad on YouTube for some startup. Innovation is really scraping the bottom of the barrel these days. All these companies are springing up around products that nobody needs, and they're not any better than anything that's already out there. They just cost more. So we're definitely circling the drain on innovation, but the company made these, and when I saw the commercial, I said, those have been out forever. I remember old people when I was a kid had these. And I thought, I wonder, I'm pretty sure that someone still makes them at not an outrageous price. And sure enough, they're not expensive at all. From people not putting ads on YouTube and pretending to have some new product. So I decided to give it a shot because I have very thick facial hair and it grows fast. And I hate shaving, and I always have. I've got sensitive skin too, and so this has always been a problem. But the takeaway from this is that I was not looking for a solution to a problem. I didn't even have the problem on my mind. But when something came at me that advertised this, I considered for half a second before I clicked off the ad whether there was any value in this for me, potentially, from my perspective. For me, shaving was a solved problem because some time ago, a long time ago, in fact, I had to shave all the time when I was in the military on a daily basis. Anyway, so I did a big trial run of getting a bunch of different razors and seeing what worked best and doing cost benefit, because razors are really expensive. And when you wear them out as fast as I do, they're extra expensive. And when you have sensitive skin, there's greater benefit in a sharp blade because it doesn't hurt you as badly. So this was the solution to that search, these green and white ones that are disposables. These worked really well. But anyway, so I know what they cost per razor. Even with inflation, it's been going up, so it's more than it was before. And I was thinking, I would rather not throw away a perfectly good setup with the razor when all I really need are new blades. And maybe I should give this a shot. So I did. I found one, it was like $8, and it came with a blade, because these have swappable blades, and the holder for it. And gave it a shot, and I sliced my face up big time. And I spent a couple minutes looking up how to do this online, but most of the time I just shave my neck, and that's mostly just to save time. So I cut my own hair and I shave just my neck, and it's to save time. I got this idea actually from Bob Ross. So you may know Bob Ross is he's deceased, but he's got the fro. He's a painting guy. He had a show on PBS or something for a long time. He's the Happy Little Trees guy. So I learned at some point that the reason he had a fro was that when he got out of the military, he didn't have tons of money. And so he had his hair permed so that he could go longer between haircuts. And then he got famous, and it was actually something that irritated him because it was part of his brand, and he didn't like the haircut, but he couldn't get a different haircut because it was part of his brand. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. It's also how he developed his style of painting, which is very, very quick, because he was starting to find people who were buying his paintings. And he said, well, if it takes me forever to make a painting, I'll make less money per hour. So if I can find a fast way of painting that people still buy, I'll make a lot more money. So this is all relevant. We're going to hit like 50 points on here. We've already hit about 10. So I gave the razor a shot and I cut up my neck. But I didn't quit because I thought, well, this is a totally different way of doing it. I'm going to take some time to practice this. And I asked myself, how long am I willing to cut myself for before I say I obviously can't figure this out? What's it worth to me? And so I came up with a time frame, and you'll notice, actually, I'm getting okay at it, but I've had a wound here for the last 2 months or something because I just couldn't figure out the Adam's apple. I just kept slicing myself on that. So I was getting better, and I was cutting myself less frequently, and it was great. And this does give you a way closer shave than anything else that I've tried. The blade lasts longer, it stays sharper for longer, and after the initial trial run with the blade that came with it, I decided it was successful enough, even though I was still cutting myself too much, to go ahead and buy more blades. And instead of just buying one blade, I thought, well, the cost-effective way of doing this is to get a multi-pack, because you usually save when you buy these things in bulk. And so I did a search on Amazon, and I found a 10-pack of 10 blades, and they were 6 cents a blade or something, 6 or 7, I think. And so I went ahead and bought tons of blades. And for me, with as infrequently, I shave about twice a week, it was something like a 10-year supply of blades. So you could consider that a pretty all-in investment, but we're talking something like $7 or whatever. So it was no big deal. And when I switched out the blade, I noticed that the other brand that I got, because it was a different brand than the actual razor and the sample blade, was not at all as nice as the original one. In fact, it was so different that I was joking that the blades come pre-dulled, because these new blades feel like the old one, the new blades feel like the old one did dull. And so that was unfortunate, but I kept going because I said, well, I've got 100 blades to use, so let's just keep rolling with this, and we'll evaluate if I need to consider those blades a loss and switch to a better brand that's a little more expensive, because I know how much the disposables cost, and I'll still be saving money. Okay, so and then yesterday I did another test because I don't normally shave above my chin. And I don't have any practice with that with this new blade. I cut my face like crazy, and it was not convenient. I'm sure I could get faster at it with time. And so what does any of this have to do with anything? It's a little thing, but it's actually a really big deal. The principles here are a big deal. So let's run down a few of them. I already mentioned I didn't know I had a problem. I wasn't thinking, oh, I have a problem. But my mind is constantly scanning for greater value than I already have. And so if you find greater value than you already have, you do have a problem, unless you have a super good reason why you don't already have that value. Like you have something better that it conflicts with. And I didn't. You could argue, well, you have an uncut face, or had an uncut face. Isn't that valuable, more valuable than saving a couple bucks on razors? Anyway. So I gave it a shot. And most people would say, well, I don't have a problem. I don't care. Skip the ad, move on. You don't even think about it. So another principle here is how to evaluate benefit. Because you might say, these razors, I don't remember offhand exactly how much they are now, but they're like 75 cents a piece or something. That's not exactly breaking the bank. So what's the big deal? Well, for starters, a 20-year supply of those razors is going to take up a lot more space than a 20-year supply of a double-edged razor blade. That's for starters. If you care, it's a whole lot of plastic to throw in the trash. But monetarily, here's the deal. It's really funny how we evaluate value with money. Because yes, it's less than $1 per razor, I think still. I don't know exactly because I have a stockpile of these, right? So I actually haven't purchased them in quite a while. But as a percentage, what's the cost difference between 7 cents and 77 cents? Or 70 cents, whatever it is. It's somewhere around tenfold. So is that a big deal? If I gave you a magic button and I said, if you push this button, you'll be 10 times better as a person than you are now, would you press the button? You should ask, well, what does it cost and what else happens? Because like if you turn into a toad or something, maybe that's not worth it. But, and yes, you can have a toad that's 10 times better than a person if you know the right kind of people and the right kind of toads. Anyway, so tenfold value increase is enormous. It's absolutely enormous. What if I told you that, let's say you're thinking about buying a house and I said, well, I've got this form that if you include it in your mortgage application, they'll give you a 90% discount. And it costs you 3 minutes of your time. There's no strings attached. Or being more realistic, it costs you 3 minutes of your time, and for a couple weeks, you're going to cut your face when you try to shave. So you probably go for that unless you're an idiot or you have some bleeding problem. You're on blood thinners or something, and you'll die if that happens. But this discussion might seem ridiculous, but it's not at all. This is actually the stuff life is made out of. Because there are situations where people are on blood thinners and they will bleed out if they get a little cut. But by and large, there are also massive, massive sources of untapped value in your life that probably have nothing to do with money, but might. And they're everywhere, and you don't even see them. Part of the challenge in life is that we do not see things. Part of the challenge in life is coming to see what we do not see and to see more accurately what we do see. So for better or for worse. So if you don't get excited about a tenfold increase in value, you and I reside in different places, at least in states of mind that differ widely from one another. So in absolute terms, 10 times whatever the annual savings on this might be, like $10 or something, or $20, you'd say like, okay, well, you're saving $200 over the course of a year on razors, and you're saving some plastic from a landfill, and you've got souvenir stainless steel razor blades that you can melt down and use for something, or make Ninja Stars or something. I had an older brother who'd always make Ninja Stars out of utility knife blades. $200 isn't nothing, but here's the deal. Here's why it actually matters. Because the principles you follow in the little things are also the principles you follow in the big things. Because that's what makes it a principle, is you live that generically across the board. What are the greatest expenses that we undertake in life? Financial expenses. It turns out that because it turns out that we pay very little attention to the little expenses and very little attention to the giant expenses. Some people at least do okay in between. But it turns out that these little things, they add up and they make an enormous difference. And the big things make an enormous difference right out of the gate. So the biggest expenses are probably, one, who you marry. That one might surprise you, but if divorce rates are higher than 80%, and especially if you're a man, because not only is it most likely that your wife will be the one filing the papers, she's also going to be strongly advantaged in whatever settlement comes out of that. It's going to cost you a heck of a lot more than it costs her. In fact, she'll probably be in a better position as a result of the divorce, which is why many people have said recently, why would you ever get into a contract that rewards bad behavior? And that's what modern marriage is for a woman. Anyway, so you're talking about losing half of your stuff that you've accumulated over the most productive, say, 10 or 20 years of your life. That's really expensive, okay? What's the second biggest cost? Probably kids, especially depending on whether you're one of these modern types that pays for their tuition at some overpriced college, and a car and all these other fancy eye gadgets. But kids are expensive no matter what, even if all you're paying for is their food, shelter, and clothing and doctor bills until they're 18. That's still crazy expensive. If you homeschool them, that's a lot more money per year with curriculum and things. But and the opportunity cost, because whoever's staying home to teach them isn't working and getting paid. Working outside the home, just saying that before the tomatoes start flying. Obviously, it's work in the home. So kids are probably number 2. House is number 3. And then car, and I had one more that I had thought about. Anyway, that's good enough. Now, here's my question. What person do you know has spent as much meticulous attention to any of those things as I did on choosing what kind of razor to buy? Because you probably don't know anyone, at least not more than maybe one person, maybe 2, who has done that much due diligence. Career might be the other one. Obviously, that's going to massively impact. Maybe college was it, but we'll just wrap that together. Your career choice and preparation is obviously another massive one. So do you know anyone who has spent as much attention or rational evaluation or experimentation with who they marry, how many kids they have, when, and how they raise them in particular? Because that seems like people just, it's like they paint their windshield black and drive down the highway at 120 miles an hour and then get surprised when they hit a pole or person, because they're so mindless about and passive about how they raise their kids. And then where you live and in what house you live and what the timing and circumstances of buying your house or renting, whatever your situation is. And then your career choice. I don't really know anyone who does that. Why? Because they don't do it in the little things either. Because they dismiss this kind of process for a razor as ridiculous and over the top, and who really cares? But they live that way with a bunch of other things in their lives, especially at the top end. But they get, no pun intended, they get cut 100 times on the middle stuff too, and they wonder why they don't have any money. Even though there's a lot of money coming in, it's going right back out the door. I wonder why. So, but none of this is particularly about money or even just temporal things. It turns out we're supposed to be thinking about this stuff. We're supposed to be using these marvelous brains that God gave us to actually sort out what has value and what it's worth and what costs what and what are the options and what are the benefits, what are the costs, and how those relate. So now let me dive just a hair deeper. Sorry, I'm full of puns today. Just a hair deeper on, I cracked myself up, but I'll tell you, I was withholding several jokes. Like I was going to say, you might be wondering why I shaved my beard off. It's because your wife says I look better that way. But I thought that'd be a little too irreverent, so I didn't say it. So I was going to substitute your mom, whatever. I thought it was funny. Anyway, just going a hair deeper with this, when it comes to evaluating value or any kind of potential choice that we have, someone quoted on a video the other day, they quoted something I said, I think in The Glory of God is Intelligence, about the connection between intelligence and the content of what God can teach you. And it turns out that you have to develop sophistication in order for God to have the canvas onto which he can paint everything he wants to show you. I knew a guy once, and one of his favorite phrases was, explain this to me in crayon, because I needed it at that level. And it was always funny, but there's actually a lesson in that too, but we'll skip over that, I guess. It was always funny, but the fact is that there are things that God cannot explain to you in crayon. He needs to write a 1,000-page book. And this is obviously all analogous, it's not necessarily literal, but there are things that God has taught to me that he needed to use 1,000 typed pages for. That's not his limitation, it's mine. But that's how far away we are from him. It can take quite a bit of effort to figure things out. A whole lot of things require a whole lot of effort. And so if you live in this simple-minded life where if the truth can't be expressed in 255 characters or less, or we can't exchange ideas through text messages, if it can't be expressed in a text message, I'm not interested. If you can't put in a TikTok video, I don't care. If you have that attitude in life, you are cutting yourself off from massive, massive, massive value that you don't have guaranteed in your life. So you got to be open to all sources. You have to be open to massive investments because cost is coupled to value. You can't separate the two. Mercy gives you a little wiggle room, and I won't get into that, but it's just a temporary thing. It's not a replacement. And so if you have limitations in the price that you're willing to pay, you can guarantee that you cannot receive the full value of what God has to give you. You have to be as unbounded in your willingness to pay as he is in his willingness to give, or else you're setting up impediments between you. And that's no good. It'll absolutely cap to the degree to which he can fulfill his intent to give you life and more abundantly. You shut down that aperture with your limitations. So, as I was shaving, the deal changed. The initial commitment was, I'm willing to drop $8 or whatever it was to get this, wish I had a word for this metal thing. I mean, it's a razor, but it's a reusable razor holder thing. But the blade, this guy right here, I only have one hand, but it unscrews and then you can replace the blade. And it's not nearly as dangerous as it seems. One blade came with this as a trial run, and I tried it the first time. The first time I tried it, I was shocked by how close of a shave I had. It was awesome. I was also shocked by how much blood came out of my neck. And I came out, and my roommate, Brock, who's a male my same age, he's 6 months older, actually, which I always rub in his face. I'm like, this is awesome. You got to get one. He's like, I'm good. I was like, you got to try it. So I have not been able to persuade him. I freaked him out with all that blood. Anyway, but the blood got better as I got better. And I was willing to give it time because I thought, well, just because I'm not good at using this doesn't mean this is not good. Did you catch that? So sometimes the goodness of something extends beyond its intrinsic value. It can be conditioned, and often is, on your skills and ability and wisdom. And sometimes things are very useful in the hands of some people, of certain calibers and qualities and aren't for others. So speaking of calibers, like if you have an elephant rifle, that's not something a kid can use very well because it's heavy and it's big and it's going to knock them flat at best. It might really hurt them or someone else, particularly an elephant. But for a large man, say, who knows how to shoot, if you're going to hunt for elephants, that's probably what you want is an elephant gun. So that can matter, right? There's a such thing as intrinsic properties, and there's a whole lot of good and evil and value and cost and benefit that, which are basically all the same thing, that strongly relies on the user, the perceiver. And so the deal changed several times because I first had to improve my skills on the blade that I had. Then I had to pick another blade. And so we have this nested decision process where originally it was just one thing. This weird new old razor, is this a good idea or not? Is this better or not? And then all these sub-questions formulated as I dug into that and as I dug into my neck. And then there's one of these sub-choices was, do I get the same blade because it's a little pricey compared to these budget ones? And the budget ones were not a good idea, it turns out. But the budget ones not being a good idea did not poison the well. It didn't make the choice bad. Just like slicing up my neck real bad the first time didn't make the choice bad. It just indicated that I needed some skills that I didn't have. I needed to learn something that I didn't know how to do yet before I could even know if it was worthwhile to do so. Because you don't need any of those skills when you're using this. It's really hard to hurt yourself with one of these. So, unintentionally, I guess I should say. So, I don't know, we could drone on about this, but you probably get the point, right? So even simple things, to extract every ounce of value out of them, you probably have to kick them up to a higher degree of sophistication. And that's like really stressful for people because they say, look, I'm overwhelmed with normal life and you want me to dive in even deeper. Yes, I do. And you know why? Because you will always be overwhelmed with normal life until you dive in deeper. Here's a secret, and you learn this really quickly if you're a good programmer. Bad programmers never get here because they just get given all these hold-aside projects that no one really cares about, and they're really easy. But if you're a good programmer, you will always get the hardest thing there is to do for your team. That's always the way it works. And what you have to do is get used to being uncomfortable. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's the secret. It's also one of many secrets to life. Because I'm lifting weights right now. If you want to get comfortable bench pressing, whatever, 100 pounds or something, the only way is to lift heavier weight or to bench press the same weight way more times than you're used to. Either way, you have to do more than you did before. And so it's only in retrospect that things get easier. The things you've overcome get easier, but they only get easier because you've moved on to focus on something harder. You're still facing hard stuff that overcomes you. It's just you've raised the bar as to how difficult those things are. You've willingly embraced greater difficulty in order to make lesser things easier to you. And you will find that applying all over the place. And so for me, to do this, you could call it research, whatever. This experimentation on this razor, I used like 0.0002% of my brain power for like 3 seconds. That's probably why I cut my face so badly. Pay attention more, slow down. But it was a break from all the other stuff that I do, right? It wasn't this stress me out thing, just like when I cut my hair, I'm overdue for that. when I cut my hair, it's not like this thing, I do put it on a to-do list, but it's the thing I do when I'm stuck on the stuff that really matters. That's why I cut it. One of the reasons I cut it myself is because I can just take a break with what I'm doing, go cut my hair real quick and go right back to whatever I was doing. And it doesn't disrupt anything. It actually advances whatever I was working on because it gives me a context break and then I can jump back into it. And my wife keeps telling me, you got to let me fix your hair because you have tiger stripes, you miss spots. But it doesn't fit in the convenience structure because, she's not just hanging around with the buzzer for, some random day and time where I go cut my hair. But that's how I do it. I put it on a list, and then sometime during the week, I get stuck on the right thing that going to cut my hair, it's a mutual benefit. Both problems get solved better. So anyway, when you structure your life like this, and you really start thinking about value, and you really open your eyes to the implicit expectation of greater value all around you, then doing things like this becomes the easiest thing in the world. It's not weird, it's not stressful, you're just riding the gravy train. Because everything in your life, you're always testing to see if there's anything better. And the second you find something, you pull it right in and run with it. Just like I made a video the other day about my son Steven's birdhouses. We went all in because that's what made sense. And it was just a hypothesis. We're still running the experiment. We'll see how it goes. With this razor, I'm pretty sure I bought 20 years worth of razor blades, right? And I don't want to use them because they're not as nice as the other ones, but I still have 20 years worth of razors, and that's okay. It was $14 or something for 20 years. And I can use them, someone else can use them, whatever. I don't really care. It's $14. But so a bunch of things that have to come together. A person who lives by this principle either lives by it all the time or does not. So $14 is a very inexpensive price to pay for all the benefits that come from living this way. And that actually rhymed. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll see you at another time. Take care.